Whoa, it's time to break down a UFC fight card for the first time in, well, a really long time. I'm getting kind of really low volume here so just give me like a hint of a second here. It is on. Huh. What's going on here? What's going on here? G-Hub, tell me more. Tell me what you've done to my poor microphone and why it's being quiet. Anyways, let's talk about Zappatella versus Dalboni, which happened last night and was my return video. Fight went pretty similar to the first one, how I thought it would go. I scored rounds 2 through 5 for Dalboni. I gave the first round to Zappatella. She had the 2 takedowns. She had moments of control. She did get the slight better of the grappling. Some of the judges gave it to Dalboni, and I can't say that I particularly disagree with that assessment. She got the better of the stand-up in that particular round. So I think it's a fair assessment. Yeah. Outside of being able to get some takedowns, Zappatella didn't really make any major adjustments, and I think the problem was that we saw that she really thought she won the first fight, and wasn't really going to make the. You don't really grow off a win; you usually grow off of losses, and it's why rematches tend to go the opposite direction. In this case, I don't think that was necessarily the case. I just think that it's Dalboni won the first fight and then won the second fight. Let's move on to the UFC Fight Night Calvin Kattar versus Giga Chikadze card. Coming to you from the UFC Apex once again. So full disclosure, often before doing a video, I will have spoken to people or listened to other podcasts talking about how I think how the fight's going to go, and sometimes those podcasts will change my mind, develop an opinion, whatever. I just tend to, but generally speaking, I'm pretty set in my ways. This is one of the exceptions where I think that my appreciation for this fight card did grow deeper than when I originally thought about it. Because when they announced Kattar versus Chikadze, I was just like, what is this? What does this fight ask of Chikadze realistically? Don't get me wrong, Calvin Kattar is a very good fighter. A guy with wins over Dan Ige, Jeremy Stevens, Ricardo Lamas, Chris Fishgold, an absolute classic with Shane Burgos. And even his UFC debut against Andre Fili was a big deal. And his losses are all to people like Hanato Makano, Zabit, and then Max Holloway. That's fantastic. He's a fantastic fighter. But he's a boxing first fighter who can wrestle, can grapple, but doesn't usually ask questions of someone in those areas. And if you look at Giga Chikadze, whose UFC run has been probably better than anyone really thought it was going to be, especially when his first 2 fights with Brandon Davis and Jamal Emmers were so close. I mean, even the Irwin Rivera and Omar Morales fights really hadn't brought me around. It was, to a certain extent, the knockout of Jamie Simmons, the victory over Cub Swanson, and then, of course, Edson Barbosa that has really made me a believer in Chikadze. But the big question of his ceiling is, how does he handle like a pressure grapple first fighter? And that's not what Kattar is. And that's why I was very disappointed by it. But at the same time, Kattar's super tough, super durable, deep technical well, although I think devolving as time goes on, because I think he's becoming a simpler striker. I think he's becoming someone who's trying to rely on power a little bit more, which I think is a problem because I don't think he necessarily has a tremendous amount of natural power. Um, but he does ask questions about being persistent and how Chikadze, who tends to be chaotic by nature and not willing to just take what the fighter is giving him and keep hitting it. Like, for example, the Morales fight would be an example of this, where like a man is wide open for leg kicks. Chikadze proves it with a half dozen or so leg kicks, messes up the leg, and then does not go back to it. It's kind of weird. Like, it's a fight that feels like it should be really simple because you have Chikadze, more creative, more varied striker, Kattar, very open to leg kicks, boxer heavy. It feels like it should be easy, but at the same time, Chikadze's inability to be consistent and I don't want to say boring because it's not boring. Be not flashy. Um, could definitely actually run him into some trouble here. That being said, I do have to take Chikadze. Kattar is coming off a hellacious beating, a career changing beating against Max Holloway. And I don't have a great deal of faith in his training surroundings doing the cartel to really develop off of that because we haven't really traditionally seen that camp radically change people off of it. And he kind of needs to go out there and almost prove to me that he is still the same guy before I'm really comfortable picking him again. So I got to go with Giga Chikadze on this one, and I'm gonna say he might knock him out because he's. It's not that he's a better finisher than Max Holloway. It's that what Max Holloway is going to do is break you down. There's not a sudden surprise moment of creativity that Max Holloway hits you with that puts you down. Giga brings that. I mean, the Giga kick, really a lot of his other strikeouts or knockouts, he's going to do things that you haven't really seen him do already in the fight. And I think that could catch Kattar. And I'm just a firm believer that the fight after you take a hellacious beating, your durability is probably compromised for a little bit. Your confidence, your ability to prep to eat the shots is a little bit not there. I think Giga will catch him. I just don't. The problem with it is that let's say Giga goes out there, he knocks out Calvin Kattar. Let's say that happens, or even if he goes to decision, what does it mean for him? Does it elevate his perception, his stock as a fighter? I don't know if it does. I mean, perception wise, it may, but because someone will say, "Oh, look, he knocked out the guy Max Holloway couldn't knock out," or he beat a guy who Max Holloway beat. And, that's a great sign. Blah blah blah. I just don't think it answers any of the questions that I fundamentally have with Giga, and that's why I'm like just that teeny bit sour on the fight. But it is not a bad way to build up someone if you're looking for that. The co-main is apparently going to be Chase Sherman versus Jake Collier. I'm not interested. I'll take. I'm not interested in either fighter. I'm not interested in Collier as a heavyweight. He's too small. He's just gotten fat. And I can relate. There's some tonnage down here. But Sherman's, despite having all the physical talents you'd want in a heavyweight, has such bad defense and bad fight IQ and bad footwork, and it's Collier will probably win by decision. But I don't care about the fight. The other fight I do care about on this card, though, is the next one: Brandon Royval, Rogerio Bontorin. I always have a hard time getting my head around Royval because the thing that constantly makes me not a believer in Royval is everything he does well involves the opponent somewhat walking into it. Like, he is a good counter scrambler. He is a bizarrely good counter striker. Um, he is a good counter wrestler. But there's nothing proactive about his game that can force that kind of fight on somebody. And to me, that seems like something that shouldn't work. And to a degree hasn't. He's you know, he's 12-6, and he has lost to guys like Casey Kenny, Nick Urso, and Ricky Palacios. These are not guys you really want to lose to if you're a guy who is very legitimately in title contention. The Moreno and Pantoja fights, that's fine. Win over Kai Car-Prance, very nice. Win over Tim Elliott, very nice. Like, there's definitely something there, but it's something that my brain just doesn't click with figuring out what his path to victory is. So Royval, I've just come to terms with, like, Royval is a guy that I'm going to probably pick against and lose quite often against, but I can never picture what the win looks like, so I can't pick him. And as a result, I'm going to go with Rogerio Bontorin. Bontorin has a lot of good physical tools. He's very strong. He has a quality back take game to him. Very, very tough. I'm not super confident in it, if I'm being completely honest. But like I said, I can never really, my head can never click with Brandon Royval and why is my brain blanking here? And winning. So, I mean, maybe that's your key, to just ignore my picks on Brandon Royval fights. Maybe that might actually honestly just be the best choice. Caitlin Chookagian will probably beat Jennifer Maia in a very similar fight to their first one. Maia has gotten better. She's sharper. She's got a little bit better of a counter game, notably. But the problem that Maia faced in the first fight with Chikadze, which, how long ago was that? November 2019. So, 2 years and change, is that she still doesn't have what I would consider the range engagement tools and the distance control game that you need to deal with Chookagian. And she's never really had the wrestling offensive game to get people to the ground where she can utilize her actually fairly solid grappling game. But yeah, I've got to go with Chookagian to win. I believe someone said it would be her record 10th win in the UFC without finishing someone. Which is just a sign that she's a volume striker, just doesn't have power. Dakota Bush versus Vyacheslav Borshev. Hate this fight because it's two fighters I have zero faith in. With Bush, he has like a volume kicking game into a BJJ game, which, unless your BJJ is amazing, I just don't think works at this level. And Borshev is a team alpha male fighter, I believe. Let me just make sure of that. Yeah, he is. Team alpha male, Sacramento, California. He is a team alpha male fighter with none of the strengths of a typical team alpha male fighter. And the problem with team alpha male is they produce very narrow definitions of what a fighter is. And I don't see that ever really working out for him. He will probably win this fight because his style is fine. It just doesn't suit team alpha male. He needs to go to another gym. Whereas with Bush, I think he just needs to throw everything out, and his mindset is just entirely wrong for what he's doing. Joe Anderson Brito versus Bill Algeo. I'm going to go with Bill Algeo. He's facing a massive athletic disparity. Do I think he finishes Brito? I'm just looking. Yeah, Brito. I don't know if Brito's ever been finished. His two losses are both like so far back that they don't have a method of any kind. Um, let's say decision. This kind of feels a lot similar to the Spike Carlisle fight, which did end in decision for Algeo, so they're pretty well committed. You have a guy very, very aggressive, very reckless almost, but very athletically gifted. Algeo is. I'm not sure I'm willing to say he's not athletically gifted. Um, or if he's just fought like really, really good athletes when I've seen him fight. So I've not seen like tons of him. So there is that. Um, but I generally, yeah, I generally think he can outlast, probably take it to decision. Jamie Pickett will lose to Joseph Holmes. I am unlikely to pick Jamie Pickett to win any UFC fights. And the reason is this: is that Jamie Pickett to me is someone who would show up at an MMA combine and do very, very well, like immensely well. He's fast. He's explosive. He passes the eye test. He's strong. He's got all the physical capabilities, but he fights like he does not want to be there. I every so often a fighter comes along that I just don't understand why they are an MMA fighter. The money is not good enough that if you don't enjoy this, that you should ever be doing it. And that's my take on Jamie Pickett. I don't have a big take on Joseph Holmes, to be honest. I just I will probably not pick Pickett. I mean, he can win because he just has an athletic advantage over so many people. I mean, he did beat Lariano Staropoli, I believe, in his last fight. Yes, he did. But and but that's like the highlight of his wins. Like, there's a lot of less athletic guys beating him. You lost to Charles Byrd. That's a bad sign. Charles Byrd, not great. Not great. Yeah. Rahimi's Brahima versus Court McGee. I'm not going to often pick Court McGee to win at this point, just because at this point in his life, the physical decline is so much there that it's hard to pick him. But Brahima, power striker into BJJ game, I think is probably the only thing that Court McGee still comfortably handles, because he still can take a shot and you will not really outgrapple him. He's coming off a win over Claudio Silva, who's a much better grappler. And I think we saw this to a certain degree with the Alex Garcia fight back in 2018, which he did win. So I've got Court McGee, maybe via some kind of choke. I think Brahima is submittable, but probably more by decision. Charles Rosa, TJ Brown. I'm gonna go with a no pick on this one because it's such a late notice. It's like a 1-day notice fight as of recording this, so it'll be what you named that on Wednesday, so 3 days to prep. I just have no idea. Charles Rose is taking this on super late notice. I don't feel good about either guy. I think that's the other thing. I think it's a fight that would be super, super close if it was on normal notice. And being on this short of notice, I just don't know what to do with it. I will also probably say that Brian Kelleher will probably defeat. Will probably either knock out or submit Gavin Kroom, who is hyper aggressive. This is another late notice replacement because it was originally going to be Kelleher versus Kakramanov, which I didn't like that fight because it felt like the wrong time for Kakramanov. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Brian Kelleher, future champion, get busy, get building, but like, he's the gateway to the top 15, and Kakramanov wasn't there in my opinion. So there's that. I like the Kroom fight better. Kelleher and Kroom feel both like those journeyman type guys who will just have like a fun boom, and then one of them will get finished. So it's a fun fight even that has no real meaning. But yeah, that's the fight card. Is it great? No. It's got 2 really interesting fights on it that have any real relevance. Kelleher versus Kroom should be a fun banger, and Algio versus Brito should be also fairly fun. That being said, it's also got some terrible fights on it. I don't think Jay Sherman versus Jake Collier is going to be very good. Jennifer Maia versus Caitlin Chookagian 1 wasn't super great. Don't think the second one's necessarily going to be any better. I think I'm going to find Dakota Bush versus Borshev kind of frustrating. But other people might find it interesting. And then like Pickett, like Court McGee, if he loses, it's incredibly sad because I don't think Brahima is UFC material. If I'm being completely honest, beating Sasha Platnikov just doesn't really do much for me, and he largely got owned by Max Griffin. He also lost to Evan Cutts back in the day, and Evan Cutts is not the guy you should be losing to be in the UFC, so that's kind of a dead end. TJ Brown and Charles Rosen might be bizarre and fun in its own way, I guess, and then Kelleher Kroom's a good action fight. By the standards we've been getting with the UFC fight nights, it's as good as they've been, although very much lacking in relevance. And I know someone will probably bring up the idea that, like, you know, really bad on paper cards sometimes deliver, and they do. But if that's your thought, that like any fight card can be the greatest fight card ever and should be treated as such, then there's just no opinion to be offered there. Because that's like, okay, go to your every local show, order every, you know, grab every Bellator card you can, every PFL card you have, every UFC card. Like it actually does a disservice to the UFC if the idea is that, okay, our entire marketing push is any fight card could be great. Remember this crappy fight card? It was really good. And then, okay, then what's the value of the brand? What's the value of the matchmaking? What's the value of a big fight? Could this be good? Yeah, it could. I mean, none of these fights do I think are going to be like completely steamroll affairs. But you know, on paper, they're not amazing. So, wrap that up. Hope you enjoy it. I don't think I saw any particular betting lines to exploit. Let me just quickly pull up here on my odds site here to see if there's anything I would really consider placing in this card. Not really seeing anything. Not really. I mean, Court McGee at minus 120 in a fight that I think he'll probably win. Not a bad idea. Bill Algio is at plus odds. That might be worth it. That might be worth a thing. I would possibly go there. That might be the bet I place for this card. And then Bontarine is a plus underdog, which means I'll probably bet on him. But like I said, the Royval and I don't trust me on that. My read on him as a fighter is just based entirely on being unable to make a mental connotation to it, is what it comes down to. So enjoy it. Tune back in next week or probably something like that. And check out the Discord listed below for the Mixed Martial Arts Simulator.